Hey guys, a little prologue for the podcast with Todd, which is also a video cast. We recorded that a couple of weeks before. It's fine to listen to a podcast. We thought we show some demos and slides, but it's fine to just listen to it as a podcast. I also put a link in the show notes if you want to see the video version of it. And there will be a second show next week, by the end of next week, with Adrian. We all know Adrian. He is the author of the book with Oracle Cloud. And so Todd is basically the official voice from Oracle, but he is totally honest. So he's one from the new Oracle guys. But we also wanted to double check it with Adrian. So there will be a follow-up show also as a screencast and a podcast with Adrian in a week. And in the meantime, there were some changes on the Apex service. So in this show, Martin ranted about the no SQL-Net policy with the Apex service. I didn't really understood it back then, but now I have to agree. He showed it afterwards, so SQL Developer Web is not there where it should be, so that you can work professionally with the Apex service without SQL-Net. And also a friend from Oracle confirmed that. So basically, you don't want to work without SQL-Net in a professional way. So I didn't know that back then. And so that this was the wrong decision also shows that now the Apex service is additionally on the free cloud. And it's very confusing because if you are clicking a free cloud account, you want to do Apex, there's this tab, this card saying Apex service. So I would say, well, that's exactly what I want. No, this is not what you want, because if you click this, you don't have SQL-Net. This is just there for upgrading purposes, because you cannot upgrade from the free cloud to the Apex service, only from the free cloud to the paid cloud, and from the free Apex service to the paid Apex service. So don't click that on the free cloud. If you're on the free cloud, just do the regular thing, configure the database, and then fire up Apex in there, and you are good to go with SQL-Net. Also, I was in contact with Oracle for a year now. We tried to figure out a cloud service for my customer, and this was not the big problem. The big problem was to find a company who is administrating it. The whole administration stuff, even if it's autonomous, it's first of all, it's a marketing name, and they're getting there, they're doing all the upgrades, and that's fine. So there is much less to do, but still you have a Formula One car and it needs to be maintained. If you're not a DBA by yourself, just a regular company, and you want to have a company who is, administrating this car, that it's still running, and extending table spaces and all the things that a database needs to be taken care of. We found a company after a year, and the first company we had this meeting with 5 managers and 1 developer who doesn't know what to do. And then the second offer was half the price of the first company, and the company we found right now is half the price of the second company. So there's a lot of money to save in this area. And also Oracle has programs where it helps you to bring your workload to the cloud if it is matching certain criteria. So if you wanna benefit from my year of getting in contact with the right Oracle people and also with the right administrative company, let me know. Just contact me via email j_schuster@me.com, or write me a direct message. Check my webpage. I will get you in contact with the right company who is administrating your Oracle Cloud, and also with the right people inside Oracle to get you the best deal. All right. Okay. Hi, guys. This is the first time we do a podcast and simultaneously also an apex.world for Dummies show. Today we have a very special guest, Todd Bottger, the cloud guy from Oracle. You probably, whenever you have dealt with cloud, this name came up for sure. So what we want to do today, we want to introduce Todd, what he's doing and his background, but also I'm trying to clarify for the apex.world for Dummies, what are the different cloud offerings regarding Apex from Oracle? What are the differences and where do you want to go or should go when you have the need to do a productive project or just playing around? Yeah. And then what are the differences? Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Todd, can you introduce yourself? What is your title? What is your role at Oracle?
You bet. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here. I've listened.
See, that's professional. That's on Joel's level. We always forget to say thank you, to say Happy New Year or something like that, right? And this is the next level. Sorry.
That is a high compliment on Joel's level. Wow. Can I tell him you said that? Anyway, thank you for the invite. It's great to be with you today. So just by way of introduction, my name's Todd Bottger. I've been with Oracle, a number of years. And earlier in my career, I worked for a couple of companies that were acquired by Oracle. So I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that, I came back here to stay. And
so you were always bought from Oracle. So they wanted to have you so that they bought the whole company whenever you.
I'm sure it was just about me, right? But yeah, I worked for some companies you may have, like Siebel Systems and Sun Microsystems.
Oh, yeah.
I worked for some other places that were ultimately acquired by Oracle.
Yeah, I still remember that.
I had shorter stints at Oracle as part of that, and then I came back to stay a little over a decade ago. So been around the block with Oracle a little bit. I have been primarily in product management type of positions, working on kind of the business side of our offerings and our technologies. Before that, I started, professional life in the early 90s. I had a computer science degree and I went out and was a software engineer. I was kind of an itinerant software engineer. I worked for a bunch of companies you probably never heard of. Actually, one of them, maybe Martin, you've heard of. I worked for Corel for a couple of years in the 90s. Have you heard of, you've probably heard of that up in Canada.
Yeah, it's big auto. Well, it was, I don't know if it even exists, Ottawa-based company.
Yeah.
The graphics company. Yeah, they were like the competitor to Photoshop, I think.
Yeah.
So are they even still around or?
To be honest with you, I wasn't there super long. I haven't kept close track of it. I think they're still around in some form. But. Okay. So anyway, I was a software engineer through much of the 90s and enjoyed that. It was a great experience. I often found myself loading the symbol tables and debugging into the Microsoft Windows NT4 kernel and things of that nature. And but actually it was fun. I enjoyed it. I went back to business school went to business school in the year 2000 and did an internship during that period. And I came out interested in these product manager type of positions where you're working in tech, you're working with software, but you're, you have the opportunity to get involved in some of the more business decisions. You're familiar with the technology, quite familiar with the technology. These are they're product manager roles, but you're not product managing a product like chewing gum, or something like that. You're product managing pretty heavy tech. They're technical product manager roles. So I've been doing that for a number of years now at a couple of different companies, and then I came back to Oracle to stay. Since then, I spent a number of years in the database security team. I was a product manager for some of our database security technology, database encryption, notably, Key Vault, some other thing. I was involved with data masking, some other things, and really enjoyed that. But I'd just been doing that for a long time, and was kind of looking for something to get back more to my developer roots. And I'd been exposed to Apex on several occasions. We built some UI in Apex for other products. I was familiar with Joel and Mike. An opportunity came up to move over into Mike's team and kind of be his cloud PM. So, bridging between the technologies in his purview, including Apex and SQL Developer and other things, bridging that into our evolving cloud strategy. So that became kind of my role, and I've been doing that since 2016 or so, and have really enjoyed it. And of course, become much more familiar with Apex and the Apex community, and now an even bigger fan. And most recently have been focused on taking Apex and related technologies and making sure that they're exposed in our cloud in a way that meets our customers' needs. That includes incorporating Apex into things like Autonomous Database, and also launching Apex-centric offerings, such as our recent Apex service. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question, but that's kind of where I've been and where I'm at now, and I'm sure enjoying it. And it's great being part of the Apex community and interacting with folks like you. It's great, love it.
Yeah. Todd, you are not looking into the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, this is yeah. So it's fine. We just go from there. I cut this out, right? So from now on, yeah, this is the right.
I just moved my whole picture so that you are right next to my camera. Now I'm looking right at you.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. It's fine. It's fine. So how much have you been involved with this always free cloud thing?
That's a great question. Yeah, was very involved with that too. So there's a backstory there as well. As you know, we had some free Apex type of offerings. We offer free Apex workspaces on apex.world.com. We had been offering something similar through Oracle Academy to students and faculty and things like that. And we were very keen to not only get Apex, but Oracle Database available in our shiny new second generation Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Cloud, right? So this is the OCI. You've probably heard the acronym OCI. We were keen to get Apex and Oracle Database, particularly Autonomous Database, available in OCI in a small free shape, a small kind of form factor that you could fire up and very easily use, very easily get started with, and not have to worry about it all going away at 12 months, like you do in some other clouds, right? Not have to stress too much about it. Just have it there and always available. We called it always, the moniker we chose for it was always free. At the time, there wasn't really a bona fide free tier in OCI. There were free trials, time-bound temporary trials, but there was no concept of having always free services. It just didn't exist. So in order to provide that for Oracle Autonomous Database and Apex running on Oracle Autonomous Database, we had to go blaze some new trails. I went out and plugged in with the OCI team, with Clay McGorick, other folks who are involved in running OCI. And we hatched this idea of having a bona fide free tier that includes not only time-bound trials, but also some small, always free shapes that people can develop on and experiment with just on an ongoing basis without having to worry about it, without having to have like a fixed deadline when it's going to go away. So that consumed almost entirely about 9 months of my life.
Yeah, I believe that.
Culminating in an announcement from Larry Ellison at Open World in 2019, where we officially launched a free tier, and we had 5 or 6 always free shapes, including Oracle Autonomous Database with Apex running on it, and a couple of a small compute VM shape and a couple other things. So we brought to the market a bona fide free tier. Yep.
And it went well. From my perspective, it was a huge hit. I think it's still, and there was a lot of noise going on after that announcement, and said, wow, let me try that, and blog posts, and even I clicked it just to check it, right? If it's real and if it's really there, and also created 2 of them just to make sure, I need to know it. And I was really surprised. It didn't look like an Oracle thing, because it was very, from my point of view, it was very professionally done. Everything worked. I not expect that. So it felt for me like, oh, this was a different team who did this whole thing, right? This was not the old Oracle. And I was very happy about the whole experience, because we always talk about the new Oracle with new people, new spirit, young people who are engaged, and, and this felt to me like, oh, this is the right spirit behind it, right?
So Martin, is it safe to say it shocked you?
Yeah.
Shock and awe.
In a positive way, actually. I didn't expect that. I said, wow, this really works like described. And and I clicked 2 databases and 2 compute instances. I don't need them. I was just curious if they are there and if it's working and up and running. And yeah, they did. And it was very easy. I mean, the whole console or cloud web console is very techie-like, right? I mean, it's made by tech people for tech people. So whenever you want to simplify that, give me a call. This is my job. I make another layer on top of it for simple people like me who just say, give me a database. I don't want to even choose between ADB and ATP. I don't even know what this is, right? Don't give me a choice which I don't understand. Oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. Just assume I'm a regular guy. I want to make Apex projects or play around. Just give me everything with one click. And after that, if I'm unhappy and it's fine to deal into tiny little settings and start asking other people, right? But besides that, the whole thing was amazing. So I was very impressed.
If I can add more color to that, is there was this heavy veil of secrecy going into the public announcement, and I just absolutely could not talk to anyone about it in any way, shape, or form, even my own spouse. So I was very happy when it finally got announced, but we didn't really get an opportunity to kind of market test this in advance of the announcement, or kind of define the positioning and the language to describe it and so forth. And it was just kind of like, can't talk about it, and then Larry announces it, and then we can talk about it. But once it happened, that was a pretty typical reaction. People would do a head check, a double check, like, Oracle and free, you're giving this to me always free, like Oracle and free.
And I think we're reading the license agreements too.
Where is the hook?
What's the catch?
Exactly.
Yeah, what's the catch? Exactly.
When is it going to disappear? How many dollars am I going to burn through until some sales rep calls me? And
actually,
the answer, it's like XE. It's like XE for the cloud, right? That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And I know you can't say that, Todd, because it might interfere on some privacy agreement or something. But I mean, for the average person, that's the simplest way to acknowledge it.
And it's totally right. So I was always afraid to click something and to be tricked into some paid account. And then I'm afraid that at the end I get a bill of $1,000. And because, oh, you used the thing, this service, thank you. Right. And so I was a little afraid that it was just some marketing gag that it won't run if you don't click this option, and this option, of course, this will cost you money, right? But it didn't. I mean, it's still there. I'm just recently I open it up just for the show and see, oh, it's still there. The databases are down, but they're still there. They're still there, and my compute instance they even ran. So impressive.
I mean, maybe this is a good point to mention. We have to keep it running clean. We have to keep it running tight, in order to provide the best experience for the people who are actively using their free databases and free Apex. Yeah. We have to keep it running clean. And we were poking around looking at terms of service for other vendors that had free tiers. And we noticed it's very common. They're not quite as candid about it as we are. We're very candid about it. You look in the terms of service just about any other free tier, and there's something in there buried that says, hey, if you don't touch it for 3 months or longer at all, we might delete it on you.
Yeah, it's fine. Fair enough.
We have some stuff that kind of keeps it running clean for stuff that's just not touched at all. But it's well documented, and we're very upfront about it. And
you get mails. And I even got a mail and say, "Hey, your database will be shut down if you don't do anything." I said, "Yeah, fine." And then I got a mail. "Oh, your database has been shut down because you didn't do anything." Yeah, I know. I mean, you get mails, right? And and you should. I mean, from an environmental perspective, which I'm totally not, but I mean, why would you, you wouldn't run your car through the night in the garage. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't let run your motor just because it's for free. The engine is for free, or the fuel is for free, right? You don't want to do it. It's not the right thing to do, period. So it's totally fine to shut it down after a period of time and also delete it, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, I talked about the whole thing with Martin before. So what I want to do now for the apex.world for Dummies show is I want to try to understand the differences, because it became more and more complicated to understand the different cloud offerings we have regarding Apex. So let's start with what we all know. You buy a computer. You install your database there, even a licensed database or an XE database, which is for free, always free, local on your machine. You install Apex in your database and you're good to go. And this is what where we all come from, right? The real box under your desk. So the next step, is when, or Martin, maybe you want to join, and when would you say, okay, this is not good enough as let's say a development environment, or why do you want to switch that to a cloud service at all? What's the reason?
Is that for me or for Todd?
Yeah, I mean, who else is called Martin in this show? I mean, it's not 5 o'clock in the morning, right? I mean, it's even hanging. It's the first time. It's not 5 o'clock in the morning where we make a podcast.
I know. I'm just saying, you left it hanging, and you didn't address it, and then it's just blank.
I did address it before. I have it on camera and on a mic.
Fair enough. So the way I see it is this. And I know you're actually, congratulations, Jürgen, you're being politically correct by calling nerds tech people. Normally you're just derogatory and throw them as nerds, but I'll just call them as it is. They're nerds, right? I'm one of them. And what I think as a nerd, we like to do and build everything ourselves, right? We want to buy our own computer, right? Even install our own hard drive and RAM and everything, and then set up the OS and set up the database, install it. And even if we're installing XE, right, there's some time and cost associated with that. And then you have to have some sort of backup plan to make sure it goes up, backs up somewhere. Then you probably have to use that 3-tier backup plan of putting it on a, let's say, a USB disk and then sending it to the cloud, or like, especially for corporations, you've got to have multiple locations. And I'm bringing this all up because there's a lot of time and effort, right? Whether it's an individual developer or an organization or a large team, and the costs just balloon from that perspective. Mm-hmm. And this is for, it could be, and Todd and I have talked about this before when we did that recording for Oracle on, it could be a small team of developers. It could be a small one developer in a large organization working for the HR department or something, right? It can happen in all these situations. And I think they're the majority, not the minority in that case. And by the time you actually get writing your first line of code, you could have spent 3-4 weeks from a procurement perspective, installation, setting things up, and guaranteeing that you have backup. Right? And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Todd or Jurgen, but you've all been through this before, I imagine. And
yep, agree.
Where I recently encountered one of these situations where we had to make this decision, right? What do we do? And how do you want to spend that first 4 weeks of time and effort? And I chose to spend it actually solving problems. And that's where the cloud comes in, where you can use the free one, right? A couple of clicks, literally. And even Todd, when it was first released, I hate to say it, it was buggy, right? It was going down a lot. And it kind of explains it now that you didn't really get to test in real world.
But nobody expected that. I mean, and I'm totally honest all the time. And I say, of course, it's buggy in the first place. And I always said, give this thing a year, right? You saw the spirit, you saw the attention to the details and everything. It takes a year to run rock solid, right?
And that's what
that's in the first day. Yeah.
And you're right. Cause like if you had asked me a year ago or today, right, if I hadn't really kicked the tires, because I tried it out whenever it first came out a couple of years ago, I would say, you know what, it's okay, but it's buggy. It's not that anymore. It's very solid, very, very solid. It's crisp from a UI perspective, but from a back end, it's not crashing all the time. You're not getting all these random ORDS errors. I just don't see it happening. Maybe I'm having a really lucky experience, cross my fingers on that. But it is significantly improved since the first launch. And so going to your question, you're gonna
so you would say, okay, from the local, let's say, XE database installation on your box, everything, you would move to the always free database offering, would you? This is the next step you would do?
I have. I used to have all these XE Dockers and I still have them on the background. I just don't know the value of time of effort on me spending that, getting it up and running. Now, there might be a case where I need that, right? And I still have that in my back pocket, but I don't need that majority of time.
Okay, get it. So now when you have a local installation, you are God to this thing, right? This is your database, this is your Apex instance, this is your memory, this is your storage, right? It's yours, everything. Nobody else is using that. So now
it comes with great responsibility too.
Yeah, sure. I'm not.
Don't forget that.
I just want to point out the differences. So now you say, now you get, let's say you used to that for 10 years and Apex even 15 years, right? It's 15 years on the market. And let's say you did this for the last 15 years. And this is the world you're living in. You can do everything anytime. And now you say, okay, now it's a much easier and cheaper offering because you don't have to deal with a lot of installation and responsibility, and go to the cloud, to the always free cloud. What you get there is 20. What are the specs?
Todd? Well, what we document and what we advertise is up to 20 gigs of storage. There's actually some kind of slippage space there where you can actually get a little more than 20 gigs. And I think the absolute max is up to 25 gigs or something. And we did that because we're advertising 20 gigs, but then we consume some of that on you. You know, like out of the gate, the new instance has some of that 20 already consumed, right? So we gave it a little bit of slippage beyond 20.
And also 20 gigs of storage, and you get one CPU, but you share the CPU with other people. Is this right? Did I understand this right?
That's right.
It's not.
Yep. For the autonomous database tech stack, at the end of the day, what's servicing customers are pods running in data centers, right? And there's different, pods and different numbers of pods depending on whether it's a busy data center or like a not so busy data center.
What is a pod for you? What is a pod? What is it? Literally.
It's a full tech stack that includes Exadata engineered systems on the back end.
So you have a data center, right? You have different data centers in the world.
Yeah.
I know one is in Frankfurt because I hooked up to that closest. And then you install there a database, multi-tenant database, right?
Well, the foundation is Exadata, right? That's the foundation, and that gives you a hardware software when we say engineered systems, like we mean it. Like there's a lot of IP in those Exadata boxes. It gives you a high degree of fault tolerance, a high degree of performance scalability, and they're not just like generic undifferentiated silicon. It's like top of the line Xeon Platinum. You get 2 threads of execution per CPU, and so we're running on these high-end Exadata machines first, and then on top of that, we're using grid infrastructure and rack and CDB, the consolidated container databases. And then we're using pluggable databases or PDBs inside of that. And when you get an autonomous database, you're getting a containerized database. You're getting what we call pluggable database. We looked at Docker and all these other containerization technologies that kind of work with databases, but you have to get it just right for it to work well with database. And we went and basically built our own containerization technology. So you get a containerized database at the end of the day, but the whole pod
When you say containerized database, is it a PDB? Do I get a PDB? No.
Well,
I do?
No. Yeah.
We're still in the tier always free cloud. We are still on this tier, right? We try to figure out what is always free cloud consisting of. So you don't get a PDB, do you?
You are getting a PDB. Yes.
Oh,
you
do.
Yep.
Oh,
yep. So at the end of the day, what you're getting with the autonomous database offerings is a PDB, pluggable database. And all these things, we have to have some way to refer to this stack. We typically will call it a pod, and there's multiple pods running in a data center, and there's 20 plus data centers all around the world now. And when it's always free, we'll provision it to, if it's a free instance, we'll provision it to pods where we've consolidated all the free instances, right? So there's some degree of isolation between the free users and the paying customers, right? They're actually on separate pods. And on those free pods, yes, you get a full PDB and you get the ability to consume a full OCPU. But in our pod orchestration technology, we're oversubscribing more. The oversubscription ratio is a little higher on free pods than it is on the pay pod. So the way we describe it is you get one shared OCPU, and in the free world, there can be measurable impact due to noisy neighbors. Whereas in the paying world, on the paying pods, we take extra precautions to ensure you are not hit by that significantly.
So what is an OCPU?
An OCPU? Okay. So that's Oracle's definition of a piece of compute. And it maps roughly to a core of a processor.
And does it have a number? Like if I were to compare it to, because it sounds like the M1 chip, right? There's no specs on it or anything like that.
Yeah.
And you can't compare M1 to anything else because
Yeah.
it's just M1. That's the number.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at Intel, it gives you some, I don't know, how many gigahertz and stuff like
Yep.
that. So what can the average person compare an OCPU to?
Well, we have to pick some label for it, and then we have to have some moniker for it and some kind of SKU for it, so to allow for billing and stuff like that. You have to pick some way to kind of name it. So we chose the term OCPU for better or for worse. You might see in other clouds terms like vCPU. And in other clouds, you only get one thread, right? OCPU, you get more than one thread. You get two threads, right? You're consuming what the core can provide there. But it, more or less equates to a core of silicon. And if you want to know exactly what model you're running, we give you some clues about that in our other offerings, like in our compute offerings. You can see very clearly if it's an AMD EPYC compute-based VM, or if it's an Intel compute-based VM. You can just tell that from the name and from the product description. In the database world, it's all running, Autonomous Database is all running on Exadata in the background, and that's on Intel silicon, for the most part. Exactly what model of Intel chip you're getting, you don't have visibility. You don't have great visibility into that, right? Because some of the pods are like they might be on one version of Exadata, and then the pod sitting next to it is like a slightly more recent version of Exadata, depending on when the pod was stood up. And those versions of Exadata may have slightly different versions of the silicon. So we don't give you great visibility. Like if you want to go to arc.intel.com and look up an exact processor number and compare it, I don't think you have a way to easily do that.
Okay, so
now if you purchase Exadata on premises, you see all the specs, you know exactly what you're getting. But in the cloud, you're getting a pod, and it may be on one version of Exadata, or it may be on the version of Exadata that was last year's model. We don't advertise that publicly.
Let's agree we get a fast CPU, right?
You're getting a fast CPU.
Core.
I'm asking this simply because some people might say, well, I can build my own computer for X amount, right?
No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We left the personal box behind your desk. We are on this free cloud. I want to figure out what is the free cloud. So we have 20 gig of storage, or even a little bit more. Then we have one CPU, Oracle CPU, which is basically one core, but it's a shared CPU. This means if there is other people, it's like the LTE network, the 3G, 4G network, right? If I have other people downloading Netflix right now, well, I'm share the bandwidth with them.
Yep.
And
Can I add one point to that too?
Yeah.
So when we say shared OCPU, what we mean is like for the free shared OCPU that you get in Always Free, it's a little more oversubscribed than what paying customers get. And in the cloud, and you see this all across vendors, the cloud economics is all about oversubscription ratio, right? How that's how businesses make it work. Being a cloud vendor, a cloud provider is like tweaking,
like airlines or hotels,
like overbooking a flight, exactly. And like other vendors out there, they all oversubscribe to exactly how they oversubscribe and what the ratio is and how it varies from data center to data. That's generally a carefully guarded secret, but that's the name of the game as a cloud vendor, is managing that in a way that you meet customers' needs, but you're also able to pay your own bills, right? It's oversubscribed.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we get this CPU oversubscribed, maybe shared by your neighbor. If everybody's showing up, maybe you get some impact, but we are still talking about a completely free thing, right? And you should be fine with that. What about memory? Do we get a memory?
Yeah. As I recall, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, I don't think this has changed since we launched it, but there's a standard RAM to CPU kind of ratio. I think it was, you get up to 8 gigs of RAM per PDB, sorry, RAM to PDB. I believe it's 8 gigs. I could be corrected on that, but that's what I recall at the time we launched it.
Okay. So we have this now we have this cloud setup in a pod, always free. You can install Apex, but you have a PDB, so you're kind of sys. You're a sys guy. You have a sys user to this PDB.
There's a lockdown profile. We call it a lockdown profile for security and isolation purposes in these CDB environments, in these pods. And part of that is narrowing what the top level Uber administrator can do. So you're not full sys. It's a subset of sys. The lockdown profile narrows what you can do.
But as you have the feeling, because you have a PDB, is a pluggable database, you have the feeling you have your own database, right? It's not called sys, I think it's called admin something. Right. But you can create your schemas and right. So this is like you wouldn't really see a difference between installing your own database and login as sys and having this cloud instance and logging in as admin. So you have the feeling, oh, that's my database, right? So this is not this is not really a change. Oh, we still have a database for free. We have storage and memory and CPU. So the next thing is this is a question for Martin. Did I announce it?
Well, yes, I've heard that. I'm expecting. So, I acknowledge I'm going to answer this.
What about backup? So you talked about backup. How do I back up my always free cloud thing?
You don't. It's done for you. And I think it's done every 24 hours, it looks like, at some random point that you cannot control. You can't do a manual backup on the always free tier as of now.
But if there is an automatic backup, which is even better, I guess. I think so. So you have an.
Yeah.
What does this mean? So worst case scenario. So you lose everything, or you messed up, right? Can I reinstall it, or what? What are you doing? Do I have one backup and it's overriding every day, so I can go back one day, or is it like Time Machine? I can go back 1 week.
I think it's more like Time Machine from what I've seen. It has a list. I haven't actually looked at the recent one. I'm not sure the retention period, but there is enough, right? And Todd, do you know how long? Like you see it in the screen, right? You see backup, and I haven't scrolled all the way down. So if you screw up today, I think you're going to be fine for yesterday, sort of thing. But Todd, maybe you can provide some information about how long that goes back for.
Yeah. That's right. I don't remember the number of days off the top of my head. I'd have to go look, but there's like a period of hot backups, more or less daily, that you can easily access and restore from in a paid service. And then also in a paid service, you can manually
don't talk about paid service. We are completely focusing on the free cloud. Now
so in the
paid, it will be the next step.
So in the free cloud, you can see that the automated backups are occurring, but your ability to restore from it is gone. There's no ability to, and there's a backstory to this as well. But you can see that the backups are occurring, but you can't restore from backup in the always free service. And that's a very key point. It's another point we're pretty candid about, is in this free service, there's some boundaries around your backup and restore capabilities.
So you cannot restore your backup. No, even if I say, no, Todd, I sent you some money. Can you please? Yeah.
Well,
so it's technically not possible, even if it's there, or is it a political thing, or what?
The stated policy is we've disabled restore from backup, and you can't do it. Now, that's for the slick built-in backup capability that's built into Autonomous Database. Automated backups, manual backups, very easy restore. It's all presented to you in the Cloud Console. It's button clicks to do a restore or take a manual backup. It's made to be a nice user experience, easy user experience. Now, as you know, there are other ways to back up data from an Oracle database, right? And by the way, that's based on RMAN in the background, as you might expect. We're using the RMAN technology in the background. But there are other ways to back up your data out of an Oracle database. So there are other ways to do it. But the slick built-in backup and restore is disabled in the always free tier. That's right.
Okay, so you have to take care of your own backups, right? In a free. Okay, that's good to know. It's very important. This is why we do the show.
So hold on. I'm just logging into my account. Just a couple of updates. I've had an account running, and I think I have 70 backups, and that's pretty much when it started. So the number is going to be greater than 70 in an always free account on that, which I think is fair.
Yeah. And there is a point at which it goes. Wait
a minute, you confuse me, guys. You confuse me. Now, Martin, you say you have 70 backups. For what? If you can't restore it, why? It's worthless, right?
Well, there is a restore button. Let me see what happens when I click it.
It won't.
So you don't trust.
Well, I don't want it. It says, "Are you sure you want to restore?" And I'm not going to do that though, because I don't want to delete anything.
I want to now. It's your chance to do it live, right?
I can't do that. But go ahead.
It won't work. Yeah, and
I don't trust
the backstory behind this, but there's an interesting backstory. The bottom line is you still have visibility to see that these automated backups are occurring, but you can't restore from them.
But this sounds like one day you can. Is this a plan that you say, okay, why? Because why would you do it? Oh, you cannot. You don't want to turn it off if you cannot restore it.
Well, we have to back up, at the pod level, for our own internal. For our own internal operational purposes to restore from catastrophes or the whole region where the data center resides falls to the ground from an earthquake or something like that. We have to have our own backups to restore from catastrophes, and that's done on an automated basis. And the thought was, well, why not expose that to the end user too and allow them to see those automated backups and restore from those backups themselves. But in the always free version, we have expressly disabled the ability to restore.
Okay, so
but there's a workaround around this. And do you want me to go over that now? Because I'm actually trying it live as we speak. Because I can do this without
cloning from backup.
Yeah. Cloning, yeah. So I'm cloning right now. We're in March, and I'm cloning.
Okay, wait a minute. This is too complicated. No. This keep the point.
This is simple. I click two buttons.
No, wait a minute. So actually, cloning is a different story. So okay, we have a complete database, a PDB. We have storage, we have memory, we have a CPU, we have everything. We can install Apex in one click, right?
No, you don't even install it. It's there.
I mean, you have to kind of activate it then. No, not anymore.
It's there. No,
there was this little.
So that's when you install, and I know you said don't go there, but if you install it on your own desktop, you're gonna have to install Apex.
So it's not installed.
It's there.
I've got a screenshot of that. You want to see that?
Yeah, please. Yeah, because I remember this card saying Apex, activate Apex or something, or install Apex. I forgot it was a long time ago.
So this is a confusing thing, that your admin password for the database is also your admin password for Apex.
Yeah.
But it's there. I don't even know if you can turn it off. Maybe
Adrian explained it to me.
Apex is installed and ready to go, but you still have to create an initial workspace and an initial user.
Yeah. Okay.
And the first time you launch it, this is actually an instance of the new Apex service, but pretend this is an always free autonomous database, right? I'll launch into Apex. I'll see these are the one-time initial setup steps, right? I got to sign in using the database admin. This is that narrowed admin account that we were talking about earlier. You sign in with that, click the button to create workspace. You'll create an initial user account and workspace and password. And then here we go. Then you're ready to go. You can log in.
Yeah. And you've got exactly. So you don't have to install it, but you have to create your workspace. We know that. Oh. And one interesting side note about this, what I stumbled upon was we are used to this Apex application builder authentication thing, right? You create your own workspace and user and whatnot. And but there was always from day one the ability to sign into the application builder by a database user, right? And this is what the cloud is always using. And so therefore is your workspace user, admin user is the same. You have to have the same database user to make the login happen. So I didn't like that. So I went back to the internal workspace and tried to change that. And I couldn't log in anymore. So I learned it the hard way, right? Don't mess around. Just don't, if you don't understand it, don't think about it. Use this admin thing, and there will be also a database user called the same way. Don't care. Don't play around with that. You will get in trouble. Okay.
Well, as you know, Apex supports a whole bunch of different authentication schemes.
Yes. Yeah.
And when Apex is running in the cloud, there are, I don't remember the exact list. Maybe I can look it up here, or Martin, you could look it up. But there's certain authentication schemes that are disabled. The common things like database user authentication or social sign-in, you can do stuff like that. But
I think it's HTTP header. It said that was probably the one that will affect most people.
And also LDAP, you cannot use an LDAP server, right?
Yep. Of the long list of authentication schemes that Apex supports, what you get when you're running Apex on an autonomous database,
we need to distinguish between login into the application builder. This is always a database account. It's always a database user, right?
No, I think you're getting confused, Jürgen. So you had to log into the application as the database user.
Application builder to the application builder.
No, I've never seen that.
Yes, this is what's happening. I talked to Adrian about it, and he explained it to me in detail. So you have always the application builder. It's not the regular where you create your application user, workspace users in Apex. It's not, your admin user, workspace admin user is a database account user.
In this case, yes.
Okay, it's good enough. Good enough. No, it's complicated. It's confusing enough. So skip that. Okay. We have installed Apex. Oh, no, we have not installed. We have configured. Thank you. We have configured Apex. So Apex is already there. You have to configure. You get a workspace. And what about the RDS stuff? Do you care about that, or who is handling that? Because this always has to go together, right? RDS, are you dealing with this or not? The web server thing.
No.
Question? No? Why not? I mean,
well, the fact that you logged into Apex should have already answered your question.
Yes, I know.
But I'm
asking
I'm giving you a hard time.
Right? I mean, the thing is, am I responsible for the RDS thing, or can I change anything there? And say, no, you don't even touch the thing because it's on the pod level and nobody's touching the RDS installation. We take care of that, and we take care of the versions, because there's always, differences between versions, which we experienced the last
cool thing.
10 years.
I don't even think the user is really presented with that, right? From the setup. And ords can get very confusing when people set it up for the first time, right? And I know we don't want to go down that path, but the nice thing is it's take it away, right? It's magically there.
Okay, fine. Love it.
So you don't even think about it. You don't deal with it. There's nothing aside from SQL web dev and maybe some RESTful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to go into it now. You just don't touch it right now. Like, it's just there. Okay. It works.
Okay, so you're good to go. It works. You don't have to take care of it. And now you have your Apex environment up and running, and you can use it for production, not production. We tried to find it for commercial use, right? This is not like apex.oracle.com, which you're not supposed to use it for commercial use, just for training purposes. This is something you can earn money with, right?
Well, that's so that's the kicker with the free instances. Really, I think you've put a point on it. Is actually the licensing terms for the free instances are fairly loose. There's nothing, expressly prohibiting you from using it for production purposes, right? We went out of our way to not put any like tricky things in the license. According to the license, you can pretty much use it for what you want. But much like you see with other cloud vendors out there, we're not innovating here. We're not doing anything different. It does not come with 24/7 Oracle support. And it does not come with an SLA. So as soon as you want to do something important, you're going to want support and you're going to want an SLA. Right?
Yes,
that's
sure.
The point at which you get a paid service. Right?
Yeah, sure. That's just the next step. But for now, because I had this discussion on Twitter and people said, yeah, okay, this is for free. And this is like, why would I even try that? Why don't I use apex.oracle.com? It's good enough. I said, no, wait a minute. This is for commercial use. And then there was this discussion. Oh, no, you don't want to use as a productive environment. Productive environment needs to have this backup recovery and this support and blah, 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 and all this stuff. I said, yeah, it's a technical term. So this is why we switched it to what people think. Can I earn money with? Can I make a business with the free tier? Yes, you can. And you can earn a shitload of money, right? If you're smart, you have a smart idea, and I think with this technical environment, you can have 100,000 concurrent page views an hour. I think Connor tested it, or probably Connor is testing everything, right? That this is not a small thing where I say, oh yeah, you can have 10 users. But this is a decent environment where you can, I have the feeling, satisfy a lot of application requirements with users, thousands of users. True or not true? Both of you.
Well, I think the 100,000 page views, that's going to depend on a lot of factors, like how big is your data set, and what is your exact workload, and like, is everything a full table scan, or what kind of queries you're.
Yeah. I'm talking about a
the
regular
100,000 page
response
views.
time.
It's like that's not unusual, but obviously mileage will vary depending on exactly what you're doing. And in terms of using it for real use cases, even production use cases, I believe there are always free users out there who are doing very real things with it, perhaps even production use cases, and we don't prohibit that. But if it's something important, you're going to want, we would recommend you want it to be supported. You want a real SLA, yes, with financial penalties, if it goes down, that's the stuff you want if it's really important. And
yeah,
I generally tell people, if it's important, you actually want to pay for it. You want to pay Oracle. That binds us to serve you. But are there people who are doing production things on the free instances? There probably are. Yeah. And we don't prohibit that.
Okay. So if you're a small startup, you have a great idea and you don't have any money and you want to just go live and try it out and earn money with it and see where it goes before you pay money for your cloud instance, free cloud, always free cloud. This is the way to go, right? With the little restrictions like backup, recovery, and and the other thing, what's wrong with mail? I realized that we always had mail issues with this Apex instance, and you couldn't send mail. So everything is free, but if you want to send a mail, you have to pay a little bit, not much. This was always confusing. How is the situation here?
So you've correctly summarized the three main restrictions with the always free, right? It's the restoring from backup, the no support, and the no official SLA. you can live with those restrictions, great. Now, mail, you do the ability to use Apex Mail and send mail. The delivery mechanism for that is something called OCI email delivery. And at present, OCI email delivery does not have an always free allocation. That's part of the always free offerings. That's part of the free tier. They only have a paid service. So when you're using that OCI email delivery with Apex Mail, you will be paying something. Now the price is not high, in my opinion. It's very reasonably priced. And in terms of maybe getting some kind of small always free allocation of the outbound email, that's something we're discussing. I certainly would like to see that. It's a topic of active discussion.
Yeah,
giving these Apex users a small free allocation of that as well.
Please, it's not, because it's really, Martin, I think you tried it, or was it Adrian? I don't know. And we talk about cents, right? I would be afraid if I say, okay, always free, always free, always free. This is the name. And I said, now you have to pay 10 cents because you send 10 mails this month. That's weird, right? I would rather, then it brings me in this situation where I say, okay, this is the catch. They try to, hook you up, and then, okay, of course you have to send mail one day, and then, oh, now you have to upgrade or something, and now the credit card goes away, and you're afraid that you get a huge bill because you don't really understand what's happening behind the scenes or what service is running, and suddenly you send a million mails, spam thing, whatnot, and you're broke right by the end of the month. So this would be great to have a reasonable amount of free mails so that you keep this spirit. It's always free. Don't worry. I don't want to worry. But you remember, we all coming from the place, Oracle free. This has never happened.
So Jürgen, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one.
Oh, that's a first.
Yeah, it's a first. I know. Here's the thing is, email's cheap, and whether it's a penny, I don't even know how much it is. I found it complicated that I had to read around to find out, like, Apex has the API that says send mail, right? And you put in a from to, and you click run, and it works in apex.oracle.com. It works on my XE instance.
Yes.
And on always free tier, it bombs. Right. And I don't know what it says. Either it doesn't say it, or you get an error message, or it's just in the mail queue sitting there. Right. I want a simple button that says, if you are going to charge us, and I'm fine with that, right? We're getting such a great service for free. Just make something easy that says yes, right? On. Why should I have to, like, if and especially one of these whole points is to encourage and entice people to come on. So they're coming on, they're kicking the tires, they want to send an email. It's part of a requirement, very common requirement. And then it doesn't work. And then you have to go scrolling on the internet and searching how to send mail in Apex. So you read, it says apexmail.send. Okay, I do it. And then you start getting these errors. And now you have to start going, and I forget who has a blog post on it. It could be Connor, it could be someone else. You have to know where to look, and you have to even know why you're looking, right? And that's the lunacy part of this, is forget whether you're charging someone or not. Even if I wanted to pay, I have to go jump through hoops, run some scripts, and it's not even worth my time.
Disagree. Because if their name is always free, I don't want to be hooked up to now you have to pay 10 cents. It's not worth it to lose this always free feeling, right? It's not worth it. And that it's complicated, it's even worse. But I think
you've hit on two issues here. If I can attempt to summarize. One is losing that free feeling, right? And hey, I'm just experimenting. I'm just doing some development. I want to do it for free. But now you're going to charge me for these emails, right? There's losing the free feeling. And then there's it not being super autonomous, right? There are blog posts, and actually Oracle has a document too about how to wire up the OCI email delivery to Apex Mail, how to make, but it's like, it isn't super autonomous when we make you go through all these manual steps to wire it up. You know, it's inconsistent with the autonomous message in this area, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's something that it's our job to go work on and go address. We want to make that more autonomous, and we do want to have some kind of small, always free allocation of the email too. I can't give you exact dates or
fine
promises or something like that, but
you're aware of it. Totally fine. Okay.
You're not the first person to raise it. And we as employees too, we use this. Always free is the main way that employees use our own services too. Like always free had an important side benefit of making OCI widely available to, you know, like Oracle employees can now use it, right? So you know, we're well aware of some of those issues because we personally have experienced them. I mean, that's one of the first things I noticed was like, hey, this part of the service, at least this one little part of the service, is not super congruent with our autonomous messaging. Other parts of it are very autonomous. You know, this managed upgrading and patching and self-tuning and troubleshooting and like all the other, it's all good. But when it comes to email, it's not super autonomous right now, right? So we're well aware of it. And I think you're right to call it out. That is something that we need to address in the quarters and years to come.
Okay. So next thing, you have your PDB, you kind of sys for this PDB. Oh yeah.
Before you go on that, I want to, Todd touched on something good, and Jürgen, you said something that I think might detract people from using the always free. So you'd really focused on the startup concept, right? When you're saying startups are going to try this and things, and then Todd's talking about internal people at Oracle using the always free to try things. I can't emphasize this enough. I think this is great for people in large corporations who can't get data time, right, from their DBA to fire up, whether that's developers trying something new or teams creating an app to solve a small problem that they just can't get done, right, with their own IT provider, their in-house IT provider. And that's I think a gap in the market that people kind of overlook, but it's huge, right? Everyone talks about startups or new companies. You have existing companies, but they just can't get.
Yeah, it's kind of a startup idea inside the company and department.
And it might not even be startup. It might just be HR.
No, I mean, thinking startup means thinking, oh, we have a project. We have a new project. How are we going to make it? Right? We are talking to get budget. It takes a year. And then we don't need the solution anymore. And to get the right people takes another year. And then we don't get the right people. And, you know, So next thing, I understand the database part. Now I'm king of the database. I understand I have Apex is installed, configured, fine. What? I'm not having the internal workspace of Apex, right? I don't have that. So is it exactly like on apex.world.com, or do I get more or less? Martin, this is your question. So what do I miss? Or is it from compared to the experience of apex.world.com? Or what do I get additional? Much more.
It's much more. And that's why so if you ever used XE and compared it to apex.oracle.com, this is XE on the Oracle Cloud. Again, terms and conditions apply on that statement, but it in the sense that you've got apex.oracle.com, you have no SQL connection. You don't have any kind of, let's call it in air quotes, sys or admin type of privileges. You're not given even a slice of the pie. You're given a slice of Apex with a schema associated to it. Now you have that PDB where you can create multiple schemas. It's like working on a regular environment with this cap, right, of 20 gigs and some sort of CPU load, right? So you've got a height and a width, and you got to stay within that box. Other than that, and that's a huge difference. Where apex.oracle.com, it's a thin layer.
But all the settings in the internal workspace, what you have when you are on the XE database and you're the owner of the Apex instance. You're not the owner of the Apex. You don't have an own Apex instance installation, do you? You just have a workspace. So let's you have, this is what I assume, you have this Apex instance installed on the container database centrally, and you have maybe, I don't know, Joe explained it once. Sorry, Joe, I forgot. Maybe Todd, you can shed some light into it. So you're not having the internal Apex workspace, do you? No.
Yeah, it exists. It's just a thinned down layer. You don't have access to on the Always Free. You don't have access to everything on apex.oracle.com. It doesn't exist for you.
It doesn't exist. Yeah. And so you can log in as the internal workspace, but you don't have all the options, right?
That's correct. And even those screenshots that Todd was showing before, that is the internal workspace, right? And it still works the same too. Like you can you can click through the OCI and click admin and it brings you to that admin screen. Or when you're on a general login, you can type internal admin and that, and it's there to create workspaces. You lose some functionality, and the reality is I looked at it and poked around and actually read the docs on what is and isn't. My gut feeling is 99.99% of people won't notice a difference. If you think you're one of those people, I would highly recommend you spend time and read the documentations. And there's great documentations on what is and isn't allowed on the Apex side. You have to spend time, right? Spend a couple hours. Don't think you're going to find this in 1 minute and understand it.
99% is good enough for me.
Odds are no one's going to even know.
This is not holding me back from anything. You say, you cannot do REST services because, nothing is holding you back on this side. All right. Anything else from the function side, which you say, for example, don't forget, compared to your XE database or installation, when you move to the Always Free, you cannot do X, which you would expect, like the mail thing was one thing. Is there another mail thing, a mail issue? Is there anything where you say, don't forget, you also cannot do Y because...
Well, you can't read, and how would I say this? You might not be able to read from the file system. And that's probably more of a general database thing, but it's done differently, right? That's where you need to use their cloud storage structure. And so that's not as much as a free tiered versus XE. That's more of when you have a local hard copy edition versus going to the cloud. So if you're reading and I know people have these systems where it's not even XE, right? They just have any sort of database and they dump files somewhere and then they read and they kind of populate that file. You can't do that, but it's just done. It's not that you can't, it's done differently. You do it through cloud storage.
Yeah, fine. Still free? Are we still talking about free? Are we still free, or we say it's done with cloud storage? It sounds you have to pay for that.
You get a free allocation of object storage as part of the
and
always free allocation. You get you get an always free allocation of object storage and an always free allocation of block storage as part of the free tier as well. Yeah.
What storage? What is the other word? Block storage or
block storage? Yeah. What is that? So this is so for example, if you're firing up a VM, you got to attach a boot volume to it. Right? The VM has to have some storage. So there's a separate block storage service, and you get an always free allocation of the block storage too. Object storage is more like what Martin's talking about, where you're dealing with files and file archives and things like that that you need to plop somewhere in a cloud bucket and then potentially access from your database.
Okay. What kind of database are we dealing with? Are we talking about an enterprise edition, a standard edition? What are we talking about?
It's enterprise edition. Yep, it's all enterprise edition with options. Most of the common options that are there for enterprise edition are available in the autonomous database tech stack too. There are some exceptions, and those are documented. But most of the common options for EE are there as the advanced compression option and
So if I have
spatial and
advanced compression, what are we talking about when we say we have 20 gigs of storage, but with advanced compression, you can bring 60 gig of data into it? Is this
That's
true?
a very good point. Yeah. So you're getting into the free tier hacks now, right? So yeah.
I mean, it's not really a hack because it's actually smaller, right? It just gives you a same package with more content, but it gives you the same package, so the same size. So you shouldn't complain. I mean, it's not to say, oh, I'm hacking from 20 gig to 60 gig. I'm just giving you a 20 gig package, but they have a 60 gig in it. It's my problem how I achieved that.
Yeah. And it's for all you listeners out there, you're getting the good stuff here now. Like we're getting into some good stuff. So all these options are there. Oracle database has the industry leading compression, right? In terms of getting good compression ratios while not impacting performance and scalability. I mean, it's the best there is, in my opinion. And it's not uncommon to get 3x, 4x, 5x compression just for like transactional kind of workloads. So you take that 20 gigs and then multiply it by 5x, you can actually fit a lot more data in an always free instance than maybe meets the eye.
Great. Right. Next thing, I heard about something cloning.
Oh. No, hold on. We have to go back to this. So there's a story between automation, between compression, right? I was laughing there because Jürgen about 2 weeks ago asked me, it's like, hey, can we do Apex or can we do compression, right? And it was for the Apex service, but the same question exists. And so I was like, I think so. I know, Todd, we sent you an email. You kind of pointed us in the right direction. And I sat down with a glass of wine one night and I actually read through, and it's painful. Like I literally, the email, I don't know if you've got it there, but you can look at it and it says, you have to go on here, then reference this, go scroll down to this section and the thing, and it's product ID this, right? That's the product. And then these are the exceptions. Then you have to link up that exception with, something else, like it inherits different rules of what things are included in each edition of the cloud product offerings. If this sounds confusing and you're listening to it, it is confusing, right? It's fine. It's like debugging a code, right? You've got to walk through line by line. And when I was talking to Jürgen, I go, we need some simple English terms and that still respect, I think, your legal obligations. And I don't know if you've ever used caniuse.com.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I think that's what we need, right? Can I use? And it really should be that easy. You shouldn't need to sit there, and especially when people are making business decisions that they may or may not regret in 3 years because they don't even see it. Like it's a simple question: advanced compression, can I use it? And even you, Todd, you weren't able to give us an answer, yes or no. You're like, well, here are the 3 links, go read it yourself. And it's not your job to go through and do that for us. But then I had to spend an hour or two reading through, and then I actually had to send that lengthy email to Jürgen. I gave him a TLDR at the top. I said yes, and
all I read.
That's all you read, yeah. But I explained it to him as like, I called him up after. I said, Jürgen, I wrote you a long email because that's the only way I could keep track myself of how I got to the conclusion of yes.
Yeah, there's advanced compression. I'm not a super duper expert on it. I know it includes a couple of different ways to do the compression actually. So it requires some familiarity with that offering in the first place. But if you're talking about in general, the restrictions that might exist in the autonomous database tech stack, as compared to running a full Oracle database yourself, there's an appendix, and this is outside of Always Free. It's outside of Apex, right? So maybe a little outside my purview, but there is an appendix in one of the autonomous database tech stacks, or autonomous database documentation libraries, and it lays out any subtle things that you need to know about, or restrictions or things that are unusual or different It's all there in one appendix. I don't know. Maybe that was the link I sent you. Maybe not. I can't recall exactly.
Well, I mean, I was scrolling through. It could have been. I mean, I was just reading appendix G, H, I, J. It's still like
it's pretty long.
Can I use?
But
right?
but
and that's
I
what
agree with. We need to have something like, guys like me, can I do advanced compression? There must be yes. Period. I don't want to read like. This is why I sent it to Martin anyway, right? I had no chance to even figure it out, and something
like
that.
The Apex stuff, right? The HTTP login, there's all these things that you can miss if you don't sit down and read it, and it's not that.
And what I also would like to have, not just you cannot do HTTP header login. What does this mean, right? I always want to know, what does this mean for me? When do I want to use that? And I want to have the use case, which I cannot do because of that. And maybe you should do this instead, right? This the solution, not just you cannot have HTTP header authentication. Who is understanding that? I mean, I can. I mean, I know roughly what it is, right? But and I say, this means if you try to log in from a different application with HTTP header, blah, 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 something, this is not going to work. So you should use OAuth2 instead. I don't know. Something like that, right? To explain something like this, can I use web page thing? Not only say yes, no, but or just give me HTTP header. Don't tell me that you cannot do this use case because of this is restricted, and what is the workaround for that? Or if there's none, and say this is what you can't do. Period. It's fine. Like you cannot do backup restore. Okay, fine. It's always good to have clarity. Much better than to have this feeling. I don't know. It's fine to say no. I love it. Right? Because I love clarity. Okay.
Could I just add one thing to that too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea. And you've given me a good idea. I'm going to reach out to our doc team and see if they thought of that. Just have a little website. Like, can I use website rather than appendices in documents, to have a little website like that? There is a level at which just take can I use in the world of JavaScript and browsers right now. There is a level of complexity to that you can't avoid, right? Like, can I use Java async on a Safari browser on iOS 12? Like, you have to know a little bit about what you're talking about to even use that in the first place.
High level, very high level stuff.
There would be
like advanced compression. There's
some level of complexity that you can't get around, because like even ACO itself includes 3 or 4 different ways to do the compression. Like, there's at some level we can make it as easy as possible to look up through a website, rather than an appendix and stuff like that. But at some level, if you want the best performance, the best scalability, we're going to offer multiple ways to do it, and that complexity isn't going to go. Like, you want the absolute market-leading performance, scalability, and compression ratio. I hate to harp on ACO, but the way to meet those requirements is like, we're going to offer multiple ways to do it. And you can't ever get away from that type of complexity, in the same way that there's a level at which you can't ever get away from the complexity in JavaScript too. That's why Babel exists, right? You hit a complexity ceiling at some point where, like, you've done your best to expose the information, make it as clear as possible, but there's some level of just inherent complexity there, just because it's been so highly optimized and highly tuned over the years, right?
Yeah, and you can also, I mean, some of that can be mitigated by, it's either no, right? And there's that is what it is, or it's yes with a star, and especially like a link that if you really want to read more on it, click here, right? And then go and really see, because again, you guys have done, like, you being Oracle and the cloud team have done a great job of listing everything out, but man, is it painful to find that information.
That's good feedback. Yeah, maybe we could just make it easier to find with a website like that. I like it.
Okay, next thing. I heard about something. I mean, we still on the free cloud. We talked about we have a PDB, a pluggable database thing, and I heard something about cloning. Is it possible to clone my PDB?
I believe it is. Yeah, in the free tier, yeah, you can clone. And as Martin pointed out, I think there's actually a way to clone from backup too. But there's, we when you go from, always free, it's typically used for things like dev, test, eval.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often not just a single person. So there's, you're working in a team of people and you're moving across these phases of your development lifecycle. You need to be able to clone your instances, right? And that's one thing where I think the autonomous database tech stack excels, is it makes it pretty easy to do complete clones. And you can clone up to a paid instance, clone from backup and then move up to a paid instance. And I believe you can clone the always free as well.
Martin, what about cloning, and what is the point of cloning? When do I want to clone something still on the free?
Okay, so just a couple things on the cloning. So you can clone from live or you can clone from the backup. And we were talking about that before, of how do you get around the ability to restore from backup on the always free?
Didn't forget you. See?
I think you're just ignoring me, but
no.
So you can, the workaround in air quotes is to actually clone. And when you clone from the free tier, you can actually clone to two different options. You can clone to another free tier if you have that allocation, right? You're allowed two free databases. So if you've exceeded that, then you have to clone to your paid tier.
Mm-hmm.
And
but you can set up two free, always free cloud, and you can say, okay, here is my development, here's my test, and I can clone development to test free.
Well, you
or the other way around.
Dev to a new thing, right? If test already existed, if A and B already existed, so you have dev and test, you couldn't clone to test. You'd have to clone to test 2. Right?
Okay.
And now you've exceeded your 2 free tiers. But I actually ran in. Oh, go ahead. You
have just one always free cloud. You have development and say, now I bring it to test. So you create a second always free tier with this clone thing, backup thing from the first one. Is this true?
That's one way, if you have the allocation room to do so. Yes.
And if you say, okay, now I want to do the second time, then you kill your second tier and start from scratch, and you do okay.
But it might take some time to propagate. So this is where I'm not 100% sure, because I don't know how long let's call it your second free one air quotes sticks around, because it takes some time to decommission it. So I don't know how long when that window opens up to say you've got a second free availability. So it might take a couple hours.
Well, just details.
It matters, because if someone's trying, I just wanted to let them know. But yes, but you can also clone from the free. If you've used A and B slots up, your first 2 slots, you can clone to a C on a paid instance. And I know what you're probably going to say. Well, I don't want to pay.
We're not there yet. Just let me ignore me again. Be in the free world still. We will get to the next step. Complicated enough.
No, this is on topic. I think
no, it's not. We're still on the always free. I want to figure out what we have in the always free, and from there we compare everything else. Okay, I can clone to a non-existent second free tier cloud instance, and if I want to do it repeated, you have to kill it, and fine, and the other way around. Okay, I get that. And you said the workaround is instead of restoring a backup into the same instance, which is not possible, you can set up a second tier from a later backup.
That's correct. True? Yes.
See, fine, love it.
There's also
not linked. Go ahead.
There's also we haven't talked too much about this. We've been talking about using the slick built-in clone and backup restore. That's part of the autonomous database tech stack. But There's also base Oracle database capabilities that you can make use of as well. For example, you can just connect over SQL Plus to an always free instance and do a schema level data pump export. Right? Right?
Yes.
Or a schema level data pump import, right? Yeah.
Hold on. Have you tried doing a schema level data pump import? Because I can't get it to work.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to see it. Yes, I've tried it. Yeah.
It's a very important thing. We have SQL-Net access. This means we can use your local SQL developer thing to connect to your always free database. So you have the same environment like you would have with your XE database. That's a very important thing.
Yep. You could, right? If it's a small amount of data, that just a test data set or a development data set that you're using for development purposes, that's a small amount of data. Just, there's ways to do that in SQL Developer too. You can actually drag and drop tables in SQL Developer and do them. You could just query the data and spool to a file. There's lots of other ways to get data out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So backup.
I want to give a little warning on the data import export test to make sure you can both export, because you can get that working, and test your import to make sure it actually imports.
Yeah.
Always
true.
Yeah, Mark, I'd like to follow up with you and figure out why that didn't work for you.
Yeah, I'll send you an email after. I've got my scripts and error messages and stuff.
Okay, I think I have a good feeling with the always free database offering now. Yeah, I know. I know. We record, right? This is why I try to push it. Let's go from there to the Apex service, which is brand new. What's different with the Apex service compared to the always free? What's different?
Great question. So there seemed like there was a need and a way that we could, better serve the requirements of our customers there. And this wasn't a great revelation. We knew there was a demand for this because, and when I say this, I'm thinking about an autonomous database type of service, but that's more targeted to Apex use cases specifically, right? So we'd heard that from customers. We knew that demand existed. We still have customers who are hanging around on this legacy schema service. We still have some customers who are still using schema service. It's a really old version of the database, really old version of Apex. But we still have customers using that because, really that's all they want. They just want Apex and a schema and a workspace, and that's it.
Yep.
We knew we could better meet the needs of those customers if we had something on the autonomous database tech stack running in OCI, our Gen 2 next gen cloud infrastructure, that was more targeted to Apex specifically. You're not necessarily intending to use the whole enchilada, the whole thing that autonomous database provides. It's really Apex. And in exchange for that more narrow use case, you want to buy it at a lower price, right? You're not leveraging all that autonomous database provides. You're zeroing in specifically on Apex, and you're expecting to have that at a somewhat lower price. So you don't have to go from zero in always free tier to like $1,200 a month, for a full-blown paid autonomous database. You want something kind of in between, and that's priced appropriately.
So now we're talking. Yeah, go ahead.
We'd heard this over and over again. We knew that the demand existed based on our experience with the legacy schema service customers, and that's really what this new service is all about. It gives you a real paid service with the support. We do have a service level objective with it. You can restore from backup. You can do all your cloning, but it is targeted specifically to Apex type of use cases. And in exchange for that, you get it at a lower price.
Yes, a little lower price. I mean, it's $360 a month. It's 24/7 on, and it's charged on an hourly basis, right? So if I'm just setting it up for, I want to test it for a week, I pay for a week. True.
That's right. Yeah, we tell people the starting price is about US $360 a month, but that's for if you're running it continuously for a 31-day month. A lot of these things are not production; they're non-production environments where you're not running it continuously for 31 days a month, and you could be paying, much less than that, actually.
Yeah,
right? If
yeah.
if it's not running the whole time.
Okay, so the big difference is now we are on a paid level. Now we have real support. True.
That's correct. Yep, it comes
And
with.
we have backup and recovery. We have the real thing. And is the architecture the same? Like we also have a PDB and we are in a pod. And what I know is that now I have an exclusive OCPU for myself. Is this true?
Yes, they're on pods that they're not oversubscribed in the same way that the free pods are. They're on regular paying customer pods, right? So you get, for every OCPU that you purchase to run this, you're getting more out of that OCPU, right? Due to the lower subscription, lower oversubscription.
Let's compare specs. What about storage, memory?
I believe the RAM per PDB, I believe that's the same. The storage, you're buying it on a per terabyte increment. It starts at you're stretching here. It's $118 US per month for the storage, and that's for a full terabyte. And I think it goes all the way. You have to get at least 1 terabyte, and I think it goes all the way up to like half a petabyte, like 500 terabytes.
Yeah. So you can scale it, but the 360 means you don't have 20 gigs. We have 1 terabyte now.
You have a full terabyte of storage, and you start at 1 OCPU too, and you get in increments of a full OCPU all the way up to 128 OCPUs. And so from there, you more out of that CPU. Yep.
So once you're in there, you can. This is what's called auto scaling, I think. You can say, hey guys, I'm trusting you, which I don't yet because I have no experience. I say, okay, let me start with my $360 environment. And now I need real power. And I need sometimes for one day, I need 4 CPUs and please scale it up for me for this one day. And then you scale down again. So, and then I pay from 1 CPU again. Is this true?
Yeah, I think I have a screenshot of that. Hold on, I'm just looking through my screenshots. Oh, no, I didn't grab a screenshot of that. There's multiple ways to do it. It's very elastic. You can manually or automatically scale. So if you manually scale, it's a dialog, pops up in a dialog that says, I'm at X CPU, OCPU right now. What do I want to go to? Do I want to double it? Do I want to triple it? Whatever, you pick how many. And it does the same thing for storage. I'm at 1 terabyte now. Do I want to go up to 100 terabytes or whatever? So you click apply, and it will go off in the background and scale you up to that additional resource. So that's the manual way to do it. There's also an automatic way to, and this is a checkbox in the provisioning dialog. So you can do this out of the gate when you provision the instance, or you can go back and set it up later if you want. And what it will do is, this is part of the autonomous technology, right? We're sitting there watching the utilization on this instance. And if we see persistent, very high utilization, we'll scale it automatically to additional OCPU. I think the limit, I need to check the doc. I believe the limit is up to 3x the OCPU. So if you have that box checked and you get some unanticipated spike in usage, it will automatically give you more OCPUs up to 3x what you have currently.
Do I get a mail that I now pay more money?
You can configure. Yes, you can configure. There's something called this is something that OCI gives us. There's a very robust event notification service that's part of OCI, and you can subscribe to events, and then you'll get emails. When things like scaling occur. It depends. It depends on what you subscribe yourself to, right? You can overload yourself with notifications, or you can only
sure. Okay, so you can scale. So now we're in the paid world, in the real world, and we can. And now this is how do I say it? Now you get the full Oracle managed service for $360 a month, maximum for 1 terabyte and 1 CPU And this is a game changer, I think, right? $360 for a real database, which you can. I think I don't know a lot of Apex applications out there which cannot fit into this tier. Martin.
Yeah. Hold on. I don't want to answer that because I was actually looking at something because you're talking about auto scaling. And Joel had mentioned this, and I'm going to share my screen quickly. I know we're going back on this, but I think it might be interesting. So this is live on a free tiered one, but it's the same you'll get on the Apex service. So if you scroll, where is it? If you scroll, like if you click on the metrics down here, you'll actually see, and I just did since February to March, what your CPU usage is, and other things like your session counts and everything else. So if you haven't checked off the auto CPU and you want to see like, would I have needed it or should I have needed it? There's some reports here and even storage utilization, right, of how things are going. So they're really cool metrics that come built, like you did no effort, you just kind of choose what you're looking for. And I think that's really interesting to use if you're one of those cases that need the auto scaling or not.
Okay.
Hey, Martin,
Good.
is what you're looking at an instance of Apex service, or is that an always free ADB?
This is actually an always free ADB. So this has nothing to do with
Okay.
Apex.
Yeah.
This is from the database level. It's a great question of, you don't have to click in Apex, you just click in the database and there you go. You see those numbers. You can kind of see I was at 6%, 5%, right? Very minimal amount, but you'll see if like you're getting high spikes, maybe you should kind of consider turning it on. But the nice thing is, if you're wondering even if you need it or not, you can kind of look historically and see it. Or if you're having problems in that hour, right, you can narrow it down to the last 2 hours and see, are you guys hitting a spike, right? If you have a major, if you're doing month-end billing or you've got a lot of hits onto your site, you can kind of see what's going on. I still checked it off to auto, but if you need it or not.
There's also we also added, I don't know if you caught this, but when we released this new Apex service, we've also added some Apex specific metrics. So I don't know, in your instance there, I don't know if you're using Apex on it, but if you click to the Apex view, you'll see some Apex specific metrics like Apex page loads and number of active Apex applications. And we have big plans to add meaningful Apex metrics to this view of the world as well.
Okay, that was an always free one, so I don't have the Apex one here. I can't show that. I'm just scanning.
No. That's too much detail. Let's keep focus on the big picture. Okay, we are now in the paid tier and we can scale up. So is there what the restrictions are that we don't have SQL-Net access?
That's right.
Why is this so? A guy like me is not understanding that. There must be a technical thing to that. Why don't we have SQL-Net? Why don't we have real SQL developer?
Yeah, it's besides the ability to connect directly and run ad hoc SQL, it's more or less functionally equivalent to a full autonomous database, right? Where with the cloning, the backup, the metrics, we tried the ability to scale to many OCPUs or many terabytes of storage. It's more or less functionally equivalent. Besides that one thing, and in order to be able to offer it at this lower price, we had to withhold something, right? In order to get our executive management to sign up for offering it.
Okay, it's not a technical issue.
Right. To get people to sign up for offering it at a quarter of the price, or maybe a fifth of it, depending on how you measure it. We have to withhold something. And our whole pitch was, hey, this is for the Apex community. It's targeted at Apex apps. Yes. So the obvious thing to turn off in exchange for that lower price was SQL-Net, right?
Okay, kill SQL-Net. Okay, it's just for this nerds developing in a browser for 15 years now.
And let me add even more color to that. Another idea we batted around was to turn off the scalability. Like, So you could only ever have one CPU and some much smaller amount of storage, 50 gigs of storage or something. But to your point, a lot of Apex apps fit nicely in one CPU and less than 20 gigs of storage. Like that's some high percentage of the app. But it turns out that for the ones that break the mold, it's really important to scale. Like, so, if you're developing nation state level vaccination initiative Apex applications, it's really important to scale.
Which we have in Vienna, by the way. So Stefan sent a screenshot that the vaccination here in Vienna is done by an Apex app. So the registering. Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. But it turns out it's not the majority use case to be able to scale the huge amount of resource. But when you do get in a situation where you do need to scale, it's absolutely mission critical. It turns out, like a very severe need, right? So we didn't want to like limit the scalability. So what's left? Well, if it's focused on Apex, the obvious thing to turn off in exchange for that lower price is SQL-Net.
Okay.
I disagree on that decision.
No,
but it's
no, it's fine. It's fine. We have it. It's good enough. Yeah. SQL Developer Web. Martin, you said it's not that great, right? It's not the
tool not you there want yet. It's not there, and okay. The reason why I disagree with it is simply it's making people's lives inconceivably hard for a business decision. And inconceivably hard in terms of release processes. And I know there's hacks, right? You can work around, you can bundle up your script, but I think it's something that we're going to regret down the road, and hopefully you change your mind on, because you're causing an inconvenience for a business decision. And I get it. I would have gone with the auto scaling. I would have definitely deferred that for the majority, because I think if you need to scale up to 3 times, you probably should be on the higher tier.
Yeah, I agree on that, by the way.
But Jürgen, it's like saying, here's a car, but I'm not going to give you a steering wheel. I'll give you everything else, right? And the question is, well, would you rather have a car that maxed out at 100 kilometers an hour and with a steering wheel, or a car that you could go 300 kilometers an hour with no steering wheel? And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but it's not that way. I mean, he's a developer nerd, right? He needs to have the latest and greatest.
No, that's not why I'm saying. You're providing inconveniences
I'm coding 80% inside Apex at least, or even 90% inside Apex. I'm not bothering to open up SQL Developer.
I don't use SQL Dev that much, but it's the ability to compile and build and source control.
But we have SQL Developer Web. We have it's not a professional. We agree it's not a professional development environment like you have, But you also came up with the idea saying, "Oh, why don't you use a development environment on the free cloud, on the always free tier with SQL Developer, and then you simply deploy to the production to the Apex service with all the service and SLAs and support and everything, right? This is something.
The question, Jürgen, is how do you deploy, right? And Oracle deployment is difficult enough. We can all agree on that, right? It's not your standard thing that when you read like how do you deploy, everyone has these fancy Java things and JavaScript environments. That's very different than an Oracle environment. Oracle is complicated in the sense it's very unforgiving. In terms of you make an error, there's no going back on it. Sometimes it stops, sometimes it doesn't, depends on your situation. So now you've taken a complicated situation and said, hey, you're going to have to deploy with your hands tied behind your back. And that's why I push for this vocally, is you're really restricting people. Now, for the person who develops everything, but in Apex, probably not too hard, but think about that. Like, how do you get tables generated across?
This was the whole point, right? The whole point of the service was, like, it's called the Apex service. And
okay, but you're creating an Apex app. How do you create a table? So in your development environment, you create a table. How do you port that over?
Can I jump in here? Sorry.
Yep.
So those are all good points. I made some of those points myself, actually, Martin. So it's fun to hear it expressed from you too, in slightly different words, but similar points.
Maybe not as politically correct, but
yeah. at the end of the day, we have to turn something off.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the thinking was A, there's always the full autonomous database service, right? And you can always use SQL-Net on the full autonomous database service. Or if you don't have the ability to pay that sort of bill, there's the always free version of it, right? And B, SQL Dev Web is not a static picture that's never going to change. I would keep an eye on that particular piece of technology because it will get better over time. It is what it is right now, but we have big plans for SQL Developer Web as well. And also you can connect over SQL CL. You do have tools that you can use. You're not totally limited. I think using the Java
you can't
Type 3.
Connect over SQL CL.
Have you tried it using the Java Type 3 driver?
What are you talking? I just want to run it. No, I have no clue what you're talking about. So, and this is like, if you can, great, right? I'll follow up with you, and I'd love to write about it. But think about and I know a lot about Oracle, right? I have no clue what you're talking about. Jürgen, do you have a clue what he's talking about?
I never used SQL CL ever. Okay.
Well, I know what SQL CL is, but I mean, I don't know I didn't know you could connect over the Java 3.
I believe you can. I mean, I'll go verify that. I just want to point out, you're not completely bereft of tooling. SQL Developer Web on its own right. Yeah, it's fairly new, but that will evolve over time. You've got other things. I don't know if you noticed, we recently flipped, when you launch SQL Developer Web from out of Apex service, we recently flipped the URL. So right now that URL doesn't go directly to SQL Developer Web. It takes you to another page that says Database Actions. And from there, you can drill into SQL Developer Web. But it exposes you to an even larger set of tooling. Now, there's a data loader that's included with the tooling. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. I encourage you to take a look at that. You're not completely bereft of tooling to support your Apex service instance. But at the end of the day, we had to turn something off. The logical candidate it was a business, and we had to turn something off in exchange for 1/4 of the price, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not denying that. And that's why I said I'd give up scaling in a heartbeat for the
Me too.
It doesn't logically make sense why you'd offer the same power, but you took the steering wheel away. That's really what you've done. And you being, and I'm not trying to, I shouldn't sound harsh on that, but that's equivalent of what you've sold me a brand new truck with no steering wheel.
Well, you have a way to steer it, right? But it's not as comfortable as it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it is what it is, right? The other thing, vanity URLs is always an issue. So you don't have that on free cloud, and you don't have that on the Apex service, right?
Well, there's it's not built in a way that I would consider to be autonomous. That's the long-term vision and the long-term objective, is to give you the ability to use custom domain names that are visible at all times in the browser address bar, right? Not just a redirect in front of something else, but visible at all times in the browser, and make it super easy to set up, super easy to maintain, super easy to use, super easy to refresh your SSL certificate as it expires periodically. That's the long-term vision. Another thing that's very much top of mind and that we're working on. That said, there are ways to do it right now. So there's a way for, instead of using the built-in middle tier with the built-in pre-configured ords, there's a way to do your own customer managed ords in a free compute VM, for example. And that's documented in the end user documentation. We do have some customers who are using that now. If you do customer managed ords, it's straightforward to set up your own vanity or your own custom domain name. There are other ways to kind of cobble it together. You could set up your own Nginx and a compute VM running in front of it. There are other ways to kind of piece it together. It's not fun. Autonomous and not the most elegant thing at the moment. But again,
but you're working on it. You say you're working on it, so we get vanity URLs on the free tier and on the Apex service. One day.
Whether you get it on the free tier or not, that will be a business decision. As far as I know, the decision has not been made yet. But Whether you get it for free and always free, I don't know. I can't say. I don't know.
Okay, but the Apex service, on the other hand, yes, you work in the Apex service for vanity URLs.
For sure. Yeah, that's absolutely. If you look at our roadmap, and I've done some presentations with Martin and others on this, like that's like number one on our roadmap. We hear you loud and clear. Is we need a much slicker, more easy to use, more autonomous way to do this on your own custom domain name. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. The next thing, when is the database updated? When is Apex updated? How am I involved with that? Can I defer that? Or do I wake up tomorrow and say, oh, nothing is running anymore. We have a new Apex version and I didn't have the chance to test it out. How is this happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as part of the autonomous, promise, we take care of major patches and upgrades, not only for Apex, but for the database itself. And we send email notifications and give loads of advanced warning. And on top of that, right now, can I share a screen again?
Sure.
I'll show you something that exists right now along these lines. Okay, so this is Apex admin services. And you recall I showed earlier setting up your first workspace and your first user. That's the one-time setup that you do. Another thing you can do is you look down here in the bottom right, it says available updates, system is up to date. Well, if we have an Apex upgrade, a major Apex upgrade pending, and we do one of these upgrades about twice a year, it maps pretty closely to the on-premises release. You'll see something different in that bottom right-hand side. You'll see something about, hey, Apex upgrade coming, and you have the ability, this is kind of the punchline, you have the ability to defer, what otherwise would be your upgrade date by a month and a half. You can say, okay, great. I know you normally would upgrade my Apex on this date, great. But I want an additional month and a half to go test my Apex apps on this forthcoming Apex upgrade before I actually uptake it, right? And for simple Apex, the majority of Apex apps are actually fairly simple, right? For fairly simple stuff, you're using fairly standard SQL queries and SQL statements. As you know, Apex apps are very durable over the years. They're very resilient, to changes due to upgrades. Most of the time, you just don't have to touch them at all for years at a time, and they work great. But we're seeing more and more customers doing more and more with Apex. Applications are getting bigger, handling more and more use cases, getting more complex. And there's a segment of customers who do want to explicitly test their apps on the forthcoming upgrade before they uptake it. And this gives you the ability to do that. That's there now. Now the UI for it, yes, it's fair to say this is a little bit buried. It's in Apex admin services right now. We would like to elevate that UI so it's a little more obvious, a little more in your face. That's something we're working on as well. But you have the ability to do this right now.
Okay, fine. Martin, how do I do it? I have this Apex service now. And now I get my notification. Oh, we will get to 21.1 in 2 weeks. What am I going to do to check this before somewhere else? How do I do that literally?
I don't have a good answer for you. I mean, if that's a critical thing for you, like Todd said, I'm kind of on his line of just let it go and fix it. But if you've got
this is not an option, right? I have a production environment on the Apex service, and now 21.1 is coming, and of course I have to test it. So is it a legit way to say, okay, I'm waiting when 21.1 is available, and I click another Apex service, and I move my database from my old one to the new one, test everything there. If it's
cloning,
working,
cloning.
Huh?
Yeah, this
Cloning,
is
yeah.
well, this is where cloning comes into play.
Okay.
You clone your Apex service instance.
Mm-hmm.
You allow the clone to take the new version of Apex on the scheduled date, per regular autonomous style, and then you defer it on your production instance, right? And you go off in your clone and you test your Apex app on the new version once it's uptaken.
When you talk about clone, are we talking about the same system, inside the same system?
This is the full instance cloning that we were talking about earlier. With literally a single button click, you can clone the full instance.
To where do I clone my instance? To where? So if I have my $360 Apex service, and now you're telling me in 2 weeks there's Apex 21.1 coming, and now I say, oops, no, let me test that. So I need a place where I let you upgrade. So this would be my thinking. I say, okay, I wait 2 weeks, and then 21.1 is, I defer it for, I don't know how many days, right? I defer it for 6 weeks. And then I wait till 21.1 is available on the Apex service. And then I would click another Apex service with 21.1 and clone my 22 instance to the 21.1 instance, kind of. And then I said, okay, now I can see if it's running there and make the fixes. And then I bring it back and kill my second Apex service instance, and let update my something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
I think that's pretty close. And Joel wrote a great blog post all about this. I probably won't do a better job articulating it than he already did. But it's very similar to what you said. You get the email saying, "Hey, an Apex upgrade to 21.1 is going to occur on your instance as early as this date." Okay, so you get the date. You say, okay, that date let's just say for hypothetical purposes, that date happened to be June 1st. I'm like, okay, my instance is going to be upgraded 21.1 on June 1st. Well, before that happens, I want to test a couple of these big apps that are mission critical that I built for this customer of mine. So what you do is you get close to the 21st, and before you hit that date, you clone your instance. Okay. And then you immediately go back to the original instance and you hit this defer setting. And my original instance, that 21.1 upgrade, is not going to happen on the scheduled date. It's going to be up to 45 days after that. Then I go to the clone that I just made and I let the upgrade happen on June 1st. Like, okay, great. It just went to 21.1. I copy over my apps. I test them on the clone. They work. I'm good.
But when you say clone, where is the clone located? Is it another Apex service, another $360 tier? So I have two of them, like the two always free. Now I have two. Or do you say, no, it's possible to clone in the same $360 box? Do you understand my problem?
Yep. It's a complete clone. If you ran it continuously for 31 days, it would also be $360 for that clone.
Yeah, okay. So
it would be in the same tenancy. You'd see it listed under your instances. The same
okay.
It's unlikely you would run it for a full 31 days continuously.
Yeah, sure.
You'd run it for like 2 days while you do your testing.
But it's my second tier.
Right, you'd pay $20 for that or something.
Okay, fine. Last step. I think we're good with Apex service now and restriction and everything. Last step, full autonomous database, everything. So then we are $1,200 a month, and then we are back on the XE, but I mean with support and everything and full scalability and whatnot, right? So this is the last step. And what I get SQL-Net access. What else do I get additionally from the upgrade from the CX360 as an Apex developer? I'm just talking about an Apex developer, right? So when do I want to upgrade to this full paid $1,200 database thing? What is the reason for?
So I'm on Apex
besides
service.
SQL-Net?
I'm on Apex service. I'm happy. I'm paying up to $360 a month for OCPU and terabyte of storage.
Yeah.
And then at some point I'm considering to upgrade up to the full-blown autonomous database. I think what you're asking, I think where you're going with this is, what are the motivations for doing the upgrade? Is that safe to say? Okay, so I think the main one is SQL-Net, right? You evolve to the point where I absolutely have to use SQL Developer Desktop. There's going to be, a Java component to this solution going forward, and I'm going to need to connect from a JDBC driver. Or, I could think of any number of scenarios, but the bottom line is you're going to need SQL-Net. Another one, by the way, is the REST SQL interface. There's a standard REST endpoint that gives you the ability to run arbitrary SQL over REST and get back JSON formatted results.
Is this not possible for the Apex service? I cannot access REST sources outside the world?
Well, there are some restrictions around that. So it would make sense to restrict SQL-Net, which gives you arbitrary SQL from any number of clients, right? But leave the arbitrary SQL over REST wide open. Right? That's an easy end run around. Right? There are some restrictions around the standard REST SQL interface in Apex service. That might be another motivation where you want to drop those restrictions as well. The easy way to do that, it's a single click upgrade, one button click, you've upgraded to full autonomous database. Now you can connect with Oracle's whole ecosystem of Oracle and third-party database clients. You can do anything you want with the standard REST SQL interface. Any such restrictions go away.
But we are still in this cloud environment setup compared to, I also can, what do I need to do if I say, I want to have my own environment, database, compute thing, and just managed in the cloud. This is a completely different story then, right? It's then, how do you call it? It's not platform as a service, or no, is it platform as a service, or, is this the next step where I say, I bring my box to you and you host it? You know what I mean? Is this a thing that or do you say no, when you have, when I'm at the full paid version, I have everything. I have a real sys user. I have a real database with a real sys user. I have complete internal workspace access for Apex, or is this not a thing?
When you upgrade from the lower cost Apex service to the full autonomous database service, which is slightly higher price, any restrictions around SQL-Net type access go away. And you get the full benefit at that point of the full autonomous stack, right? But you're still on the autonomous stack. And there are other database services from Oracle that are not autonomous, right? There's the database cloud service that gives you VM. It gives you a pre-configured Oracle database running in a VM with SSH access to the host and full, that looks more like a standard Oracle database if that's what you want.
Yes. How do you call that? How do you call this service?
That's called database cloud service, DBCS, database cloud service, right? And Oracle, we sell a fair number of those too, right? There are people who want the full VM and they want to SSH into it and they want the godlike power, and they're happy to take, incur some responsibilities in terms of upgrading and patching and some of this other autonomous stuff. They're happy to incur that in exchange for the bigger godlike access. Right?
Okay.
So that's an option too. But if the one-click upgrade, that's within the autonomous database stack, right? It's going from Apex service, which is on autonomous database stack, with some limitations in exchange for the lower price, up to the full Oracle autonomous database, where all such limitations are dropped, but you pay more, right? If you want to have that full access, you can also just buy a VM and install, if you have a license, install Oracle database in your own VM, right? There's many ways you can run Oracle database in cloud that are outside of autonomous. There's also something called Exadata Cloud Service, we're giving you, physical slices of raw Exadata machines. We sell a lot of those too. Many customers running on Exadata cloud service, but those types of services do give you the more broad control, more broad access at the expense of not enjoying the autonomous benefits.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So can we touch on something I think more people probably wonder? So we talked about upgrading Apex, but how do we upgrade the database? So right now, for instance, I'm on a Toronto tier and I can only choose 19C. And I know eventually 21C will be available there, right? Because it's available in a lot of other locations or regions. How do I go about doing that?
I have 21C. Sorry, I just have to mention it.
You always have to
I'm
be
not
better
using
than
it.
me, Jürgen.
I'm not. Yeah, I simply love to have it.
You're in Frankfurt or Amsterdam?
Yes,
okay.
Frankfurt. Yeah.
So 21C is it was just officially announced in January, so it's fairly new. It is broadly available in the free tier for the always free autonomous databases. In the paid tier, it is available. My understanding is it's available selectively right now. There are certain data centers where it's available. There's other data centers where it's not. It is our goal to make 21C broadly available everywhere over the course of the next 12 months or so, and give people access to do that. And I imagine the upgrade going from 19C to 21C, it will look something like the prior upgrade we did going 18C to 19C. I don't know, did either of you, were you using Autonomous Database at a time where you could observe the 18C to 19C?
No.
Okay. So I imagine it'll work something similar to that. You'll start seeing banner notifications at the top of the OCI console when you log in.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll say, hey, 21C is available now. We'd encourage you to upgrade to it. You have the ability, there'll be a window of time where you can click something to do the 19C to 21C upgrade. And it's under your control. And that will be a fairly long window if the 18C to 19C, pattern is followed. That'll be a fairly long window. And then at some time, there will be a drop dead date where we're going to say, hey, anyone that's still on the older database, we're going to send you to the new release, right? At some level, there'll probably be a drop dead date. Now, will that drop dead date come before the next LTS release? And are we gonna autonomously push to the LTS release instead of one?
You have to say long-term support.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Long-term support. 21C is what we call an innovation release, right?
We will. 19C. We discussed that with Gerald. So this podcast will come after your podcast will be published. So people, if you want to understand all this database versions, long-term and what is 21C called? Innovation release. Yeah. If you want to know all about that, listen to the next podcast coming with Gerald.
Yep. So Todd, I want to drill in when you're saying you'll see a banner at the top. We'll click on it. What do I need to do? Do I just click and it goes down for a couple of hours or so and it upgrades and then it pops back up? Or does it get more complicated than that?
I can't warranty exactly what the user experience will be like, but that was more or less the experience when we went 18C to 19C. You literally could click. There was some small period of downtime, and then when it comes back, it's on 19C. Yeah, exactly how it'll work going to 21C, that's future stuff. I can't speculate on that, but I imagine it'll be something similar. We'll endeavor to make it familiar and similar. There is an interesting question around when the drop dead date arrives, will our next long-term support release be available? Maybe we'll want to push people to long-term support release rather than the innovation release. Yeah. But those are all kind of like, they're out there in the future in the quarters to come. And I can't give you a definitive answer, right? I'm probably not the best person to give you a definitive answer right now. I'm fairly focused on Apex, but I imagine it'll look something like what occurred going from 18C to 19C. And it was something fairly similar to what you described. Yes.
Okay.
Amazing. I'm done, guys. I'm through. I'm exhausted. It, great, was amazing. So I have answered all my questions. Anything from you, Martin? Still open?
No, Todd, I just sent you an email. I tested quickly the Apex service connection, and I can't get a wallet on there. So maybe we'll follow up after and on an
Yeah, there will
SQL-CL
be.
connection.
You can write blog posts and stuff like that, right? I want to get out the big picture, and now I have a much better understanding of the whole infrastructure, and it was confusing before, to be honest. And now I hope we brought in some clarity, and I will be happy to make a follow-up, let's say next year, right? To see what has changed. Let's make this a regular, because I think this will become more and more important. There will be more and more changes, and I would be happy to make a follow-up when there are new changes or to follow the way, right? Because like you said, the always free cloud tier developed a lot, and I see the speed you brought into it, and I think it was an amazing endeavor to bring this out in such a short time, and it's working from day one. It bugs, of course, right? But I mean, and you made it rock solid over the year, and I think we can expect you not stopping there where you are right now. This is also just the first release.
I couldn't agree more, and I'd be delighted to come back and do a checkpoint in a year. It's a really exciting time, not only for Oracle customers, Oracle partners, people who are in the Oracle ecosystem, but as an employee, working for Oracle, we're in the midst of this inflection point where everything is pivoting strongly to the cloud, strongly to more managed and autonomous. And it's, as a product manager, it's just a really exciting time. Like, there's so much exciting stuff that we can do, and that's coming. And it's never a dull moment. I would just say stay tuned. Next year at this time, I'm sure we're going to have lots of great stuff to talk about. So yeah, I'll look forward to that.
All right.
And as an end user, I can say it's noticed, right? Like 5 years ago, just select star from EMP took hours and hours to get to that point, right? Now we're 2 clicks away or 3 clicks away. So it's, though I'm hard on you sometimes with some of my feedback, in all honesty, in that sense, it's gotten so much better, right? And I think for newer people joining, it's going to make their lives a lot easier and hopefully more exposed to Oracle, right? And get more people on board. I think it's like the new Oracle. There's some, I don't know if 2020 was a line or 2019 or 18, but something shifted internally, and it's definitely noticeable on the end, like for end users.
I agree. So the experience we had with the Apex team, it's spreading like a good virus. Sorry for the comparison, but this is what it is, right? I see the spirit and this openness and the engagement. Oracle becomes relatable again, and not just this arrogant block you cannot talk to.
I think you're absolutely right, Jordan. There's if I can give you a little more insight into the inner workings here, there's a lot of the people on the Apex team. When a lot of these OCI folks came on board, and we were really, turning OCI into something great, we've kind of found kindred spirits. And it wasn't by accident that we were able to pull off this free tier in fairly short order and get it launched, in the face of what was a cultural shift for Oracle at that time. It's because these two groups, these two constituencies who were kind of kindred spirits came together, and we said, this needs to happen. It's going to happen. And I think the rest of the company has gotten behind that very strongly now. And things are changing quickly. Everyone wants to make the cloud successful. Everyone wants to make the cloud deliver on its true promise, lower cost, much easier. It should just be like the easy button in that commercial, and everyone is just committed to that and working furiously to make it happen. And so buckle up. stay tuned. We'll have a lot of new and cool stuff to talk about next year at this time.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Todd.
Thanks for your time, Todd. We really appreciate it.
Great
You're very
talk.
welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Todd.